the next session, the third panel discussion of the day is industry R&D trends and collaboration with academia. And I want to request Dr. Alok Nath Dey, CDO Samsung Bangalore, Deepak Bhagat, Senior Director SAP USA, Sumit Verma, Director Strategy at Intel, Dr. Taslim Arif Sayed, CEO CCAMP and CBS, Professor Avinash Agrawal, CEO Technopark, Arnab Kumar, Project Director Niti Aayog, to please come on the stage, together with our moderator for the session, Pradeep Bhargav, CEO Gladminds, as well as Global President, Alumni Association, IIT Kanpur. Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon. So we have a very strong panel right now. I know that we had a equally interesting session some time back. And what we also saw that in the last message, be part of the change that you want to see. And I would like to touch some of the aspects that we want to see from the speakers, what they have done, and then how they can guide us what one could do altogether. So as a start, I would like a brief 2-minute introduction about yourself, but also the areas that you are focusing in, and then we'll hone in with additional aspects. So may I request from that side, Arnab, if you could just spend 2 minutes on what you're doing and also a little background about yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Pradeep ji. So I am Program Director, Frontier Technologies at Niti Aayog. As part of this mandate, I have been tasked to lead Government of India's initiatives, which include strategy, projects, and implementation of up-and-coming emerging technologies, predominantly artificial intelligence, fintech, and IR 4.0. I have also have a broader mandate of looking at how innovation should be used both in civil society and governance. One of the mandates that we have delivered in recently is developing India's national strategy for artificial intelligence, which we developed and released in June 2018. With that, we are one of the select few countries which has a defined artificial intelligence strategy for the country. We are also in the process of building and bringing a large-scale mission focused on implementing the recommendations of the strategy. And with that, we'll be a handful of countries, probably less than 7 or 8 of them are across the world, will have both a defined strategy and a large-scale national program focused on artificial intelligence. In addition, I have been also working on multiple projects which are in the intersection of social good and technology, which includes interventions in healthcare, agriculture, education, etc.
And you've also been part of Chapter AI to some extent.
Yes, so Chapter AI, Umakant, and all are good friends.
Yep, okay. Yep, from Sumit, from your side.
Thank you, and firstly, congratulations to IIT Kanpur's Diamond Jubilee, and thank you for having me here. I've been collaborating with universities for about 10, 12 years. Being at Intel, done jobs in product management, engineering management, corporate affairs, strategy, and I think it's been a very good learning experience for me. For the past 5, 6 years, I've been also leading the research for Intel in India, which research agendas are important for us, where the collaborations are. So about 8, 10 researches that we are doing actively leading from India, apart from several other researchers that Intel Corporation has been collaborating with academicians and researchers in India. So thank you.
Thanks. And Deepak, yeah.
Hi, I want to thank you for inviting me to this opportunity. It's very well organized, by the way. It's one of the best events I've attended from IIT Kanpur. I'm not here to attend this one. This is not the primary purpose of my visit to India. I came here to attend a wedding of my family member. And today happened to be a free day, so I'm here. So thanks a lot. I graduated in '73, and since then I've been in the same field, which is called computing, because I was very passionate about it. I was born and raised in the city of Kanpur, like Naveen Tiwari. And during the summer, I used to hang out in computer centers, so I suppose that's what influenced me. And since then, my journey has taken me to DCM Data Products in India, where it was calculators, then went to the US, did my master's, and specialized in computer architecture and operating systems. and then part of general automation for first generation of 8086 based microcomputers, then Hewlett-Packard RISC mini computers, open systems, and then Sun Microsystems for 64-bit computing platforms. So I've always been in the development, leading the development of the next generation of a computing platform in Silicon Valley. I've been there for 40 years in California and for 42 years. And at present, I'm a senior director at SAP in the cloud architecture and engineering team. Almost 7 years ago, SAP decided to make a transition from on-premise solution to cloud. So they needed to have somebody, a team come and build the private cloud for our own company. So I've been part of that, and we have 40 data centers all over the world. All our SaaS properties essentially run on our data centers. And we are the largest enterprise software company in the world. And 76% of the world's GDP transactions touch some application of SAP. And they're running on our data centers right now as a SaaS platforms running on the systems that we have designed from our teams.
Yep, Alok, so
Okay. So again, thanks for inviting. Samsung has been there for last 23 years in India, and we have grown significantly from our R&D. Probably 8,000 plus people are working between Bangalore and Noida. There is a manufacturing center in Chennai as well as in Noida. Last year we announced how we would be doubling the manufacturing of mobile phones. Like currently we are doing 60 millions per year, which would be in 2020, hopefully 100 million plus. Our Gurgaon office is sales and marketing. So that's the history part of it. What we do particularly in Bangalore center is a lot of advanced activities, and we have defined 3 COEs broadly. One is around advanced communications, 5G. One is around artificial intelligence, whether it is voice, vision, text, data. And then you have the IoT, which is kind of buzzword, and at the same time, there is a lot that is happening. There are problems and challenges and that we are trying to solve. So these are broad global COEs that company acknowledge us for our contributions significantly. On top of that, specifically Make for India, a lot of our people have been spending time, whether it is integrated Iris tab, Naveen just told about InMobi, we started working with them on that glance 5 years back, and then build that together, kind of giving our inputs on that journey. There are many such examples that we have been building specifically for India. As part of my responsibility, as I'm privileged to be the CTO for Samsung in India, based out of Bangalore. 3 things that we look into. One is in-house innovations, the number of patents that we are filing every year from this center itself. About 300 patents we are filing in India, and probably 2/3 of it is also going to be going global, either Europe or US. So it's a critical contributions, whether on 5G or IoT and AI that I mentioned. The second dimension is on the open innovation. So there, obviously, the university interactions, collaborations, and we have many examples. You can go next round. But we also created a startup fund last year end, and over time, we have been able to invest on many startups. We've been working very deeply with them. We started with a journey of apps, Tizen app support, to examples like InMobi and Haptic. They have been deeply integrating, but then we also thought that it will be a good idea to invest in them and have some go-to-market jointly. So we have a good success in the limited period that we have done. And the third part of it is about the technical forum standards. Our people are going in global standards like 3GPP SA6. We have the global chair from our team. SA3, we have the vice chair recently on security, and we've been talking to Pamela also that they are joining and contributing in TSDSI, but what can we do more? So that's definitely a topic. So that's my kind of CTO role. I spend 2/3 here, and every month I'm spending for last 18 months, 10 days in Korea. So that's my global responsibility on the IoT, how to do and build it. Thank you.
So very interesting, and you were with us in our C program as well. So thank you once again. Yeah, Professor Avinash.
Yeah, so my name is Avinash Agarwal. I am a professor of mechanical engineering at IIT Kanpur. I joined IIT Kanpur in 2001, and my areas of specialization include internal combustion engines, fuels. But I am here in the capacity of professor in charge of Technopark. So I will just brief you about this initiative that we have taken. So after Professor Karandikar joined IIT Kanpur, this Technopark initiative gained some momentum, and I was assigned the responsibility in July 2018. So I did a lot of survey for about 6 to 9 months, developed all the background work, and I kind of tried to identify the core competence of IIT Kanpur. And I took the data from dean's offices, looked at in how many areas we are strong. And I figured out that at least 10 to 12 areas, we are one of the best in the country. And that's where we thought that let's stress and let's connect with the industry. So essentially we started the Technopark on 1st March. And I'm very happy to report that today we have 8 companies in the campus. By the end of this year, the target was 10, and I think we will hit the target of 10 companies on board. And next year we will have 25 companies. So my role as a CEO of Technopark is basically to connect industry with what we can do from IIT Kanpur. The strength of IIT Kanpur is to be mapped to the industry, and that's exactly the role that me and my team have been playing for last 8 to 10 months. And as we go forward, I'll tell you some of the programs that we have launched and some of the success stories that we already have in our
I think that's great, because people are looking at what's being done when they would like to, and I think this was the question that we also had, what is exactly being done in IIT Kanpur that industry can really start talking? And I think this would help to take the first steps of collaboration as we will progress. So before we go to the next round, I would have Taslim also share something about himself, and you are from a little different area from the rest. So it will be even more interesting.
Surely, sure. Hi, good afternoon everyone. I'm Taslim Arif Syed. I work at CCAM, that is Center for Cellular Molecular Platforms. I have nothing in concrete connected with IIT Kanpur, but phenomenal to be in such an elite gathering. But I have very, very high regards because a lot of people whom I look up to actually have the lineage of IIT Kanpur, and there are very high numbers. And that is something that I always had been on mind, that whenever we look at some lineages, somehow a lot of tree actually goes back to IIT Kanpur. So I've always looked up to IIT Kanpurians very, very highly. So congratulations to IIT Kanpur for that.
It's never too late to start.
True. I have still some life to go, so I'll look up that. Thank you. Just to talk about, so CCAM, as I was saying, so I'm trained as a neuroscientist. For my training, largely my interest is translation of academic science into applications. Neurodegeneration has been my primary interest, but what CCAM attempts to do, as Pradeep was saying, we are largely attempting for last 8 to 10 years. It's an initiative of Department of Biotechnology, Ministry of Science and Technology, Government of India. We're attempting to actually convert phenomenal early stage deep science risky ideas and see if we can build disruptive innovations which have a long-term impact. So, and this has been an attempt, and we are building a thesis out of it, that whether this could be a philosophy for the organization. Once you start an attempt, and if you actually try to see some good results, you can actually have philosophy which you can master. So I think currently what we actually have been able to do is pick riskier and riskier ideas and see some of them actually have done well. So we have now at our own place with across India around 150 such deep science innovations which have impact in healthcare, agriculture, and environment. And if I just very quickly in 1 or 2 sentences say that they have phenomenal impact in terms of human lives already. So just to give you one of the product that we just got approved at the US FDA actually prevents one of the most fatal condition in ICU setting called ventilator-associated pneumonia. When a patient somehow acquires an infection while he or she is on ventilator. And the stats suggest that 50% people do not come back if they're at the old stage when they acquire ventilator-associated pneumonia. This is the first device globally to prevent such happening, and it has now been US FDA approved and saving lives already. Just to give you a stat of it, the study was done at JIPMER and other places. Usually 10 out of 30 would get the infection. Here, none of them, 0, got the infection. That is something very, very impacting. Right, we are starting to save lives. Another device which is actually now starting to save lives in Karnataka itself, what you call it as neonatal respiratory support, where early on when neonates cannot have proper respiratory support, the device called SANS is now actually saving lives. And when neonatologists send you a postcard, of course, with a picture of the neonate, of course, anonymizing it, and write with handwriting that I would not have saved this baby but for the device that you actually enabled, I think that's a gratification that one looks for. And that is amazing. We have similar examples now in agriculture. We have similar examples in environment where we actually can prevent global warming using synthetic biology as an approach. So what we are attempting to do, I will not take much time, but I'm sure you'll give me a second chance. No, but what I was attempting to do, or say that the thesis is picking those ideas and see if some of them, not all 150, but 5, 10 of them will go, because when they do, we will then be a real global innovation powerhouse as well. So that's the thesis.
So, I mean, frankly, it's a lot of success in different areas that you have been able to show. So how do you really pick these ideas?
Correct. So I think one of the very important thing is that what we have realized, it hasn't been from day one, but one of the very important thing we want to do is we want to actually be the first choice for somebody who would like to attempt a deep science idea. It's like, if I want to do deep science idea, the first place that has to come to mind is this. And that is the first. You have to be attractive point. Good schools actually attract the best students, as IIT Kanpur would do, right? So that's the first point to actually be and then you nurture them to the next level, where you can provide other aspects like the nurturing environments from science to non-science, from global connections that we have been able to build now. We are funded by US government BARDA for one of the biggest program called CARBEX, which is against the antimicrobial resistance. So such global connections, and in connection with US FDA after that, ensures that if there is a potential to realize of the idea of the innovation, we can help them realize that potential, which is also possibly more important journey as well.
Okay. So why I asked this question was because in the morning also they talked about if the idea can really create a disruption. I mean, this is what you think from your side, or is there a market feedback which tells you that, okay, these are the areas I must pursue, and you are confident that you will deliver?
Correct. So I'll be honest. I think there is first a gut feeling that you have some sense of it. Sometimes you get corrected heavily. Sometimes when you go out, you get corrected heavily because what you felt was not the correct thing. But when you talk to people, and when you're most excited and somebody says, by the way, it doesn't work that way, and there's a huge correction. The only thing you need to do is be receptive to that input and build it further. There's always a gut feeling, but you have to be receptive to
So start quickly with a gut feel and then take the feedback. Indeed. To course correct.
First start, absolutely.
But take a start.
Absolutely.
So that's excellent. From you, I'll jump to Deepak because he threatened me before I started the panel that it should not too much intellectualize. So the point was, but that's not the only point. The point was also that we have that side, people who have focused on strategy, and Deepak has been heading strategy, and I would like him to sort of share two perspectives. One from a strategic direction perspective as what SAP or equivalent company should give us. And second is how to make some of these thoughts workable.
Yeah, okay. So let me describe to you, as I told earlier that we are the largest enterprise software mission critical company, and the customers trust us with their enterprise data. We are the nerve centers of 90% of the Fortune 1000 companies. So until now, we used to sell our software on-premise, which means that we'll supply our software to the companies, and the companies will get infrastructure from HP or IBM and other places, and they'll have their own teams to manage the whole stack. But then after we made a transition to cloud, we essentially have things in our own data centers. So the cloudification is complete now. The next thing that we are looking into it is how do we morph or evolve our enterprise applications so that they become intelligent. So the term that is being used inside SAP and probably potentially outside the industry also in another year or so called intelligent enterprises, where essentially you tap into the technologies of artificial intelligence and machine learning and IoT itself and make them an integral part of your application workflow. Because these are technologies, these are not end products. And what is happening is there's an explosion of data. There are 3 different types of data that is being created. In the past, it was the data of records, which you could store onto the Oracle database or some other databases. And then the second latest set of data that came out is called data of interaction. Facebook is an example of it. WhatsApp is an example of it. And the magnitude of the data that is getting created per day is an order of 2 orders of magnitude more than what the data of record gets created every year. And there's a new third wave that is evolving that's called data of action. And this is where you have essentially IoT space. This is where you have self-driving cars, etc., which itself is producing 3 orders of magnitude of data that is getting created. So the challenge as a computing stack is how do you process this kind of a data and get some meaningful sense out of it. So the artificial intelligence and machine learning is a great way to essentially look into this kind of data and essentially come to some conclusions. It may not be the perfect answer, but it will be close enough that you can figure it out how to make it the correct one. So that's the focus on the application side. And all such intelligence will be put into all our applications, and our applications would be driven by a common data model. Not only across SAP, but across other companies also that we have partnered with, like Microsoft or Adobe, etc., so that your data model is common, so you could be operating on the data that is coming out of Adobe or from Microsoft, and vice versa, right? So that collaboration.
So one of the things what you're saying is you have identified this data explosion as one of the key areas. The second, you're saying in order to make it workable, collaboration has been done and
collaboration
common
is,
model.
Yeah. And the other thing is, the third thing is the cloudification itself. Now we are taking our cloud to the next journey that we call it as a hybrid cloud. So our strategy is 4+1, which means that +1 is our own cloud and +4 are the 3 US hyperscalers, AWS, Azure, and GCP. And the 4th one is Alibaba. So this way, it would not matter which area you are running in, which public cloud you are running in, our applications will have a seamless access, same user interface itself. And the kind of things which are happening at the application level is what I call it is an API economy. So if you have access to a unique data, you can make that as a service available to others so that the other applications can pick on it and essentially make it available. This is the golden era of creation of new applications, and I think India can do a tremendous job considering you all started with Y2K and look where you have come in last 20 years itself. Find the unique value that you can add that I think Naveen or somebody said that India is faced with so many problems. If you can solve those problems, you'll create the intellectual property also and run them into 4 different data centers, right? And use some of the services that are coming out of SAP and maybe some of the other ones as well. I think you can have a leadership position, in my opinion, because in order to take a leadership position in a high tech, you need to have some layers of your stack that the world is using. Today, you don't have that. Today, you are only providing resources, and excellent resources. But I think that transition has to take place, and you have to make that happen. And I'm so glad that under Pradeep's leadership, the Alumni Association has turned around and is beginning to focus more on entrepreneurship and working with IIT Kanpur itself. And I think what we should do is strengthen it. And we can help you from Silicon Valley because that's what we have done. for last, at least I have done it for 40 years, etc. How to structure yourself and create a space which is complementary to what is coming out of the Silicon Valley. You can't compete with Silicon Valley because it's got trillions of dollars of investment into it. But you can create your own space with your own technology which coexists with what Silicon Valley does and enhance the value of everyone in the country plus economic benefits. At the underlying level, we have to work with, for our cloud infrastructure, we have to work with the leading infrastructure providers like Hewlett-Packard and Lenovo and Cisco and Arista, etc. So we have visibility into what they are also doing in terms of their roadmaps, etc. And then lately, we have been asked to work with Azure and AWS and SCP as well. And they all are trying to make infrastructure so seamless and so self-reliant that you could have up to 10 nines of reliability, 99.9999 going all the way. And that requires special unique skill sets. So if the researchers at IIT Kanpur want to explore into that area, establishing partnership with these companies, understanding their computing model, understanding their architecture model, and enhancing it will create the best-in-class scientists for you, which can further help the local economy. That's the way I would like to propose it, to have a two-tier structure, one at the infrastructure level, one at the application level.
Yeah, so one, you said hedging in a way as far as the usage of cloud was concerned. The second was have our own platform here, which could be built and then
on top of it. So you don't have to worry about where the compute infrastructure is coming or network infrastructure is coming. I think there was one session where somebody mentioned, I think it was a session of professors, they said equipment is very expensive. I think I take a very different point of view. Equipment is cheap. It's only when you use it that you pay. Pay per use is the model that has been created. You have to take advantage of it, right? And the question becomes is how do you take advantage of it to create global enterprises leveraging your strength, which is in the application space. That should be the direction, and that ought to feed into the IITs so that the right kind of research problems could be given to them, and then they can partner with the top tier enterprise companies in the world, in India itself, and further be viewed as part of the overall stack.
Thanks, Deepak. So I'll move to Sumit, looking at these points, but also from your perspective, your experience in academic collaborations. And you've done quite a few, and some thoughts around it, and also thoughts around building, if we have to do in case of IITK context, for example, how would we go about?
Sure. So I think there's a lot of knowledge, not only on the dais, but in the room. I'll share some of my experiences and learnings. So we talked about saying that we are best in the country, but and probably top 3 in the country. These are the top 5 IITs best in the country. But now is the time of the world, right? So unless we be best in the world, we can't really do the best. So that thought has to change, and and being the best in the world. Second is coming very close to liking nature. I think we have a very strong campaign, Save the Tiger campaign. I often say that we need a Save the Professor campaign. Because there are very few good professors, and the professors that are like new upcoming professors, like the baby cubs, they need to be developed, matured, so that we have a large number of solid professors in the country. 1,000 professors, good professors in India is not going to do much, right? So from a capacity building perspective, those are the steps that I think government is taking, but more action is required. We speak about why industry R&D collaborations is important. Everyone agrees the collaboration is weak, and there are reasons for that. It's tough to move corporate dollars, for my case, from Silicon Valley to India. In your case, right, probably from Germany or Korea to India. So there has to be small steps of how that happens. China did it fantastically well. They had a multi-government, multiplier grant program, because Chinese government said, hey, if you're going to invest billions of dollars in R&D, might as well get a small percentage of industry share so that it keeps it relevant, keeps it, latest, etc. And it's not only focused to academic labs. Of course, there's a reason to have some projects that are limited to academic labs. So having said that, rally around industry money and industry dollars, top it up with a multiplier grant from government to ensure there's a high relevance of investment that government is doing in India. There's only limited number of dollars that government of India can invest in R&D, even though we are right now very far from other countries. We talk about GERD ratio and other components saying that we need to invest more in R&D. But the way to look smartly is how can government of India continue to invest more but more smartly with these kind of collaborations. Third is kind of commercialization. We have focused a lot of effort in publications, which I think is great. It's kind of bread and butter. But to take to the next level, commercialization is the key. Our IP story is still not strong. So it's getting there, but there's a clear focus on how it can happen. And industry, government, and academia can all come together to create strong intellectual property for the country as well as commercialization opportunity for industry at large, right? That's how we will see more value. These are 2-3 points, but I know we have, I'll come back to, don't want to take too much time here, but yeah, thanks.
So I would now request Alok to sort of continue some of the things on corporate side. And what are the areas that you could identify? Because you're wearing fundamentally 3 hats. One, you said standards. Second, you said the technology element. And third is the startups. So what are maybe, now 1 or 2 points from these which could potentially be a start of academic collaboration?
I think broadly, if not just Samsung, but if I take any MNCs or even Indian companies that are big enough, whatever other topics, you might be touching different verticals, whether it is healthcare or education or logistics. That's different, but for us, as I mentioned, 5G, AI, and IoT has been the key theme. And the reason of this, that advanced communications we've been doing for last 23 years, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, so it's not just 1 year's activities, it takes long time. I joined 2011 Samsung, and my first assignment has been 5G MAC layer research. And since then, 11 to 15, we did a lot of patent filing, not knowing even standards, because standard has started from 16 on 5G, 3GPP release 14, and then onwards. But we, in anticipation that this could potentially go into this, we started working into that. AI has multifacets of vision and voice, I mentioned that, IoT. So the important thing is what these entities in India, because if you are into the headquarter, you have all the liberties to go deep into one areas and do it. But if you are onto the satellite centers, peripheral centers, then I think instead of jumping and trying to push there, many a times that synergy building. For example, we have been working in Samsung's TV divisions, digital appliances, mobile. So we thought if we combine, even in headquarters, it will be difficult for all of those people to collaborate and make an IoT impact. But here, among these people, we could glue it. And then the flow of 5G, AI, IoT, because there is smart devices, then there is a smart connectivity where you can put AI, and then obviously you can go to cloud, edge, and all of those. So I think how you strategize your strength and being here, recognizing the difficulties, and you could shape it up. There are many other technologies, for example, hardware, software in that space, the whole partitioning, what goes, the neural processing unit, the imaging. Everybody takes mobile, people use it for camera pictures, right? And we are talking about 108 megapixels for, the camera sensors that will be coming. So, on one hand, you look into hardware. Those who can look into a little bit details that based on applications, what core, because it's not about multi-core, I can put 10 cores and it will work fine. But sometimes you have to divide small cores, big cores, how many of them, NPU, DSP. So this is one space, whoever can understand this hardware and software well, they will be winner. An associated point to that is even software. In India, we talk about, we are software competent people, but Unfortunately, when you look into ACM, ICPC test, our best center, IIIT Hyderabad, has been at 35th rank. IITs are at 58th, 60th rank. So there is a gap. Our claim and evidence are not in line. Therefore, we need to have more open source, more collaboration, whether it is data, whether it is IoT and AI. We can take some leads into those directions and bridge it. We need to show our leadership in software, which I don't think we claim, but I think there is a gap in that. So that's one part. Just a complimentary point on the data, that's a very nice point, but it's also about this dilemma, handling this critical dilemma. Then on one hand, we all would love to have privacy, right? We don't want any data to go. On the other hand, we say, why are you sending me this advertisement? And Naveen talked about instead of apps, every time being client and asking the app to give you the information, why can't it give it to you, knowing you? So this space of privacy and personalization and anonymizations, how much do you do? What data do you keep? Big data is not always big data. We have trillions and trillions of spaces, there is statistics, it says between 2 to 5% of data is being used effectively. So on one hand, we would love to go get all these data. On the other hand, how do you nurture that? Sometimes small data could give you very nice, interesting evidences. All this bias removal, we have seen that, you could train AI models to be very biased. And so instead of being more fairer, that's a society's demand. On the other hand, we could go the other directions through all these high tech and go backward. So that's one important point that we need to be able to be very careful. So those are some of the technology trends. I could go on, but...
So it just gives the pointers, what are the areas that you're looking at and what then, from academia also they can focus on. So I will move from you right now to Arnab. And we talked about data and we had now some touch of AI. So what exactly the big plans that you're having? And my question would now start going a little more how we get to collaborate. And we discussed some numbers that, you come up with a project and our IIT Kanpur is ready to do.
Yeah. So in terms of the priority that we have in artificial intelligence, and some of you who may have seen our AI strategy, the biggest focus for us is research and development, and this includes both fundamental research and applied research and everything that we need to enable the kind of research. If you look at the three major axioms of how any country or any institution will be able to claim its leadership position in artificial intelligence.
But what kind of research? So when you say fundamental in this case?
Yeah, so I'll elaborate on that.
Yep.
So the first is access to the computing capability. The second aspect is the access to algorithms themselves, and the third is the access to the data infrastructure. All these three are areas of both research and collaboration. So for example, if you want to specialize on computer vision or NLP, you need to have people who can understand the next generation of algorithms, and bias was mentioned as one of the key elements here. And this is where a country as diverse as India, we have to make sure that the kind of algorithms that we develop and the kind of data it's being trained on, it doesn't inherently reflect the biases that we have as a society built over hundreds of years. And a very simple example, if we had to train a financial services AI algorithm which will say how much loan people should get, and if you look at the way loans have been disbursed in this country, several communities of minorities will be excluded or will be given loans at usury interest rates because that's how our data has revealed us. So how do we go about building research tools so that we address these kind of biases at the initiation stage itself rather than we reacting after we come to know of? And you have seen how it's a very big shame that a company as big as Apple, backed by Goldman Sachs, and we have seen that the husband-wife having the higher FICO score than husband, getting 1/10 of the credit limit. So these are real examples that need to be solved. These needs to be solved through advanced research.
So what kind of capability you would expect? So I'm trying from a functional perspective and a technology perspective.
Sure.
Which could then enable, looking at such projects.
So from the government's perspective, and we have been in multiple conversations where we have seen that how many top-notch AI professors do we have in this country? And the number would be in double digits, not even triple digits. How do we build this capacity over a longer period of time? If you look at AI professors, top researchers across the globe, a lot of them are of Indian origin. How do we find the opportunity to bring them back to India? And there are two important levers. And also, how do we incentivize people who are actually in India and working on these areas of technology? There are only two levers. The first is you actually give them incentives which is in line with best of the world. And second is you actually give them use cases which can't be found anywhere. And I have been working with professors from, say, Singapore, from Germany. They have the best healthcare solutions. They don't have the diversity of data that this country, even a single hospital in this country can actually offer. So if you can match that by saying that, look, you focus, you become a center of excellence in, say, IIT Kanpur. You focus only on applied aspect of research for the next several years. I'll take care of every bureaucratic hassle that you may see over the next 7 years. Build me the best solution that can eradicate TB from this country. That is the kind of efforts that we are trying to put. We are trying to say that we'll put large amounts of money in specific areas where we'll make them the best AI centers, not just in India, but across the globe, and we'll incentivize that. What we'll also do is that we'll incentivize access to data infrastructure. We'll incentivize access to those that our successive classes of PhD students and postdoc students don't actually go to the West and make them their playground. India should become their preferred choice of playground. And this again will be the same two levers, incentives and use cases. If we have top-notch researchers working in this country, we'll have top-notch students focusing on this country. And those people will be focusing on problems that are unique to us. Autonomous vehicle is a very important area of artificial intelligence that this country probably doesn't need at this point in time. What we need is that if healthcare, for example, we should have been able to address the three levers of access, affordability, and availability through democratizing access to healthcare everywhere. For places where we have doctors, we let them focus on specialized cases. Where we don't have doctors, we have diagnostic tools who can flag that, oh, there's a chance of you having a cancer, why don't you go and see a specialist? If we have, say, limited number of hospitals, limited number of radiologists and pathologists, those radiologists and pathologists to only be focused on specialized case, and all routine cases should be done by a diagnosis tool. That is the kind of focus that we want from a government's perspective, a combination of both automation and augmentation of the limited resource that we have as a country. When we have to solve for a billion scale problems, these are the kind of solutions that we'll have to build and see whether if I build a healthcare solution, can it be scaled in 700 districts of this country? Whether I build an agronomics solution, it should not end up like
So I think
way we have soil health
the
cards,
use
etc.
cases fundamentally would be available because there is a lot of data in India anyway, and we said it's a good playground. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Sumit.
So I think one thing I'd like to provide input, and I don't think I agree with on one of the points you mentioned. The government should do it. I think government has no business to be in the business, right? It has to be handled by entrepreneurs like you, technologists like you. You have to become activists, you have to educate the masses, and you have to take control of the direction of this country from the technology point of view. Government cannot do it. I've been tracking them for last 46 years. I left India in 75. And sorry to say that. Figure it out how you can do it yourself. Form groups, raise funds, raise the bar high, and execute to the perfection. That's the only way to make forward progress.
Yeah,
Sumit.
just to add, so I think NITI and has a program that Intel has collaborated with somebody jointly called International Center for Transformative AI, ICT, AI, ICTI, that aims at the same thing, national level problems, and it could be vertical areas that Intel is also focused on, healthcare, it could be agriculture, transportation, retail, and look into problems of scale that's, of course, valuable to Intel and the industry at large. But more importantly, it's an India problem. And what will really excite everyone is it's something that could be scaled outside India as well. So GST and Aadhaar are kind of live examples of the problems that nobody solved and we solved it ourselves, right? So similarly, all those problems that we talked about, healthcare, retail, transportation, needs to be solved. And the professors in Kanpur and researchers in Kanpur, my only thought would be to look into problems, because half the job is identifying the problems. Most of the situations and meetings that I go to, we think the problems are available, we think the problems are there, it's just a matter of solving that, but it's really not like that. So if we can find those big problems, I think half the job is done. Then we have a great team of kind of executing
So
and
that is
solving
what
them.
I was coming to, that if he is already identified and we know that there is a playground available, it is then, you plug in the skill set and try to then solve it. But what you said is still we need to formally and deeply focus and define the problem better. So on that, probably you could continue that, is a question that how do you in the company then define a budget for a specific problem to be solved? Because what I'm trying to arrive at, if there is a problem defined within a corporate, then we can say, okay, here is an academic institute which can help solve it jointly. So what is the method of budgeting and how then you allocate from a perspective that it could be given to an academic? So I would like you to sort of first address it, and then Deepak and then Alok, and then we will go back to the panel.
Sure.
Sure, okay.
So shall I go first? Thank you. So if I break the problems into 3 zones, right? Something that's probably needs a solution in 3 years, some that's kind of small term, something that needs a solution in about 5-7 years, and something that's probably out there maybe 10 years out, right?
Yep.
Problems that are about 3 years out, it's kind of best that kind of respective companies solve it because they know it so well. Going out and doing a collaboration on that probably is not the most effective way to do things. Problems that are about 5 to 7 years out, mid zone, I think that requires a lot of collaboration because not one organization can do it. And that's why the problems are something that's overall a competitive process. Companies like ours says, okay, these are the problems, or probably the areas where the problems exist. Can we come up with big problems that, if solved, will create a positive effect? And to do that, it requires collaborations between researchers because typically that research expertise doesn't sit into one organization. So what I have seen is that what MIT would do is they will kind of collaborate with maybe let's say ASU or something else and build a collaborative proposal saying this is how multiple organizations come together or multi-department come together to solve a problem. So that's the mid zone, which is a very competitive process in most of the industry where whoever brings out the best proposal kind of gets that dollars to go do that research. And third, which is kind of a 10-year out research problem, is something that's really relevant for the country, really relevant for the industry. No one knows a lot about what needs to be done, more in the case of fundamental research, I'll think of. That's something where the academic community and the researchers are the best to do it, right? And the way to do it is, again, create a budget that kind of encourages failures. It should not be something that, if a money is available, it kind of keeps on renewed every year. So it should be devised in a way that the government gives funding, industry gives funding, and there's a culture of R&D where failures are accepted, and a research that is not doing well can be dropped after year 2. It should not be the case that, okay, the research is funded by whichever entity, it ought to be completed till 5 years, even though it's not relevant or not.
So there's some method of measurement and you can drop or take a new
correct.
project
and
as well.
then take new projects. But that's the area where I think there's a lot of creativity that's required. Governments in mature countries are doing it fairly well. I think we are doing that. We are beginning to do that in India as well, but there's still a lot of improvement. Yeah, so that's how typically it's done, right? So if a company like ours wants to invest in a long-range research, it looks for collaboration from industry, it looks for collaborations from government, because it's probably none of our issue right now, but it will be everyone's issue after a few years, right? So.
Yep. So Alok, quickly, and then Deepak.
Yeah, sure. Let me touch on that open innovation part, and you asked about the startups as well as the university. For startups, we've got the equation right. What do you make, what do you buy? That's a kind of decisions. What do you look for? Because specific areas do not matter, but what you really look for is even big companies cannot plan. Like, many of the companies may not have developed themselves on blockchain. This might have come from much more from a startup angle. So if you have not built and it is becoming a trend, then obviously at some point the big companies would like to absorb that, whether it is for financial purpose, whether it is for IoT or anything else. So that's a good example whereby you bring a core technology and it helps us, what we missed could be covered. Second thing is reachability. You know, it's a big country in this case. There are many solutions that we want to take it to the villages, to the rural segments, many different segments. And if you have certain solutions and apps on certain devices, then we could take that. Third thing is, you know, monetizations. You know, there are services, people have built nice business model, and then we could join force and say, yeah, if you do together and you license and you make that money, probably we could share a little bit into that. So that's kind of broad 3 categories in which open innovation with startups could work. With the universities, we've been putting a lot of effort sincerely, and many companies. Some are successful, some we need to make it put more effort to be successful. Easier ones are more of the internships, longer internships, hiring of the employees, go sponsor, hackathon, Techkriti, you know, all of those parts.
Those are the easier ones.
Those are the easier ones. But when you go to the next step, for example, for us, we are doing this university collaboration in 3 ways. One, bilateral, meaning the local center is quite empowered and we have a problem in one direction for voice vision, and I can go and partner with someone. We did with IITM one project on, let's say, materials. Somebody is doing simulation, somebody is doing actual experiments, and do they collaborate, right? So it's together building something. So that's like between the two. We have a global research outreach fund that is true for anybody from any corners could apply, but there is a global standards. And then we have started working on one recent project with IIT Kanpur, with your Flex Electronics Center. We've started this August on the, how to do on the Flex Electronics together, along with our counterparts in Europe. There are other companies that are participating, 2 companies, and then us together. So we have started, and hopefully that's a 3-year long drawn project, and we see some success. These are some of the models.
Sounds good. So I'll because we are running short of time, so I'll let Taslim look at some of these perspectives and propose what are the ways you look at proposing budget for this activity. And second, what I'm trying to figure out is how that budget is committed to an institute.
Possibly, I'll try to give my best to the query that has been raised. So I'll just, if I may just step back. In the field of life sciences broadly, if you actually put it in parallel with engineering, I know there is a shortage of time, I'll try to go as soon as possible. There is a difference in terms of the outcome of the academia that comes in. Engineering broadly brings in the technology much closer in terms of its readiness to be taken forward by industry. If you want to go by the TRLs, it goes to 6, 7-ish kind of it. But if you talk,
I saw 5 to 7 years, and then you're looking at it could be more in case of life science.
In biology, largely because it starts from understanding, a knowledge generation, that is the most phenomenal.
So does it then mean then we're looking at much more reliable partner because it's a long-term relationship?
Correct, absolutely. So idea would be that if there are larger questions which are not a short-term projects, it requires a larger long-term engagement that is more important. So it may more or less, many a times starts with a project which would say that this is the question, this is the hypothesis, we want to test it. So it starts with the proof of concept capability, and then it goes on to validation.
So is it milestone based, and we could drop it if certain milestones are not reached?
Correct.
And we could continue the milestones.
Absolutely. So you could have go, no go, milestone based decision, whether your hypothesis, does it work or not, in whichever environment you talk about. But broadly, in terms of budgeting aspects, I think when you talk, when we broadly talk about from the industrial perspective, it actually, you look at it from the combination of how crucial this particular knowledge that has to go forward, and then the scaling up component of it. So you actually look at it from the dividing it between the POC to scale up component, and then you look at it back in the engagement with academics.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
So Professor Narwal, you wanted to sort of respond to some of the points which have been
So if you look at the Silicon Valley, it all started from 1951 and Stanford. That was the research park, and that is the origin of the Silicon Valley. And if you look at the research park is actually a very good vehicle in which industry and
So it's
academia
in a way a bridge.
in a way a bridge. Because you see in academia, we do research from TRL 1 to TRL 3. The moment a student submits his thesis, it's TRL 3. Industry doesn't pick up anything which is less than TRL 6 or 7. And 4 to 6 is what is called Valley of Death. And that's where this concept of research park becomes extremely important. And the idea here is that the industry should come and set up a research center and not just give the problem to academia, but work with academia to solve the problem. And many of the problems which are flagged by my colleagues here can be solved if we work hand in hand. Government of India has realized this, and I think now there are 9 research parks that have been set up already in different institutes. 2004 was the first research park that was set up in IIT Madras, but in last 3-4 years, 8 more have been sanctioned. And this is a very good effort where we invite the industry, and we are, traditionally we have been doing research in research project mode and consultancy project where industry offloads their problem to the academia and expect a solution. But that's not really the modern way. I think we have to collaborate actively, and that's why in research park, actually what we intend is that the industry should come on board, and then we open our complete ecosystem. That means the infrastructure, the equipment, the manpower, the intelligence, the IP, the students, everything is opened up. So that is, I think that is the next way to move forward, and I think that is what we are trying to do to address many of these issues. For example, we are very bad in IIT Kanpur, we are very bad in terms of marketing. We do a lot of things. There are many medical innovations that have happened, but we have not marketed them well. We work with hospitals.
I think more than marketing, what we understood was if we are able to build a trust,
Yes.
if we are able to put our hands for collaboration, and I think that's the way, and that is what has been presented. So right from defining a problem, looking at the problem, looking at the milestone and achieving them. So I think in fair measure, we have quite a good understanding of what fundamentally we could do. And with that, from a time perspective that we have run out, I would just see if we have a possibility of question or two from the audience. 2 questions. Okay. So we have 2 question possibility from the audience, and Mike.
I just want to clarify, the opinion expressed by me are my personal opinions, and not that of my corporate world, even though some of the strategies I've shared of SAP are SAP publicly announced strategies. As I said, I'm here on a personal trip here.
Yeah, I think all of us are very conscious of the fact that industry and R&D and the academic institutes can collaborate and then bring up some new technologies together. I think the biggest issue is that corporates will like to keep it themselves. So I'm not sure how do you resolve this problem of, let's say, a particular corporate wanting a early edge in a particular technology. So now, why will a corporate like this, or with this mindset, ever go to a common place like academic institute and pick it up and then make it? Because academic institute, I do not know, do they have any secrecy clause that they will not share a particular technology with somebody else? May not be very easy, right? So this is the contradiction which I have in mind. If some of you can clarify that.
Is it the starting point, which is a question?
I'm saying that, if on a greenfield R&D project, if let's say SAP has some thought and they want to collaborate with IIT Kanpur, so that being such a greenfield that even Microsoft must be working, Oracle is also wanting to work. So how does that thing work? Because you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I think there are safety provisions in place. Whenever we take such a project where confidential information is shared, it is limited to a fixed number of researchers. There are NDA clauses and provisions available. And in fact, we have been doing industry projects which have confidential information provided to us. And it's a routine thing, so it's secrecy of the trade is not really a problem.
Yeah, one last question. Yep.
Yeah, we've had some interactions. We found there are a lot of barriers. The first was, actually I may disagree with Arnab in that healthcare, while it looks jazzy, has very high quality standards which are not easy to pass. And I think Taslim knows about it. So it is, and you have to be very careful in healthcare as to what you can do and what you will not do. The other thing which we found is, I don't know, there are issues like retention of expertise in academia. A student does a thesis and moves on, and then who's going to pick up all the specialized knowledge which they have developed? And it's not just the publications. I got to know the last piece of last comma and the last semicolon in the C or Java code, only then I'll be able to use it further. So what is the sort of, and these students get 50 lakhs salaries in industry. The current RA salaries are probably government capped at 10 or 12 lakhs. So what is Niti Ayog's and the government stand on this?
But it's not just the issue with academics. The same issue exists in the corporate world also. And there are processes in place to make sure that nobody is indispensable. Right?
The only thing is, for India it's very new. And the budgets you work with are very low compared to what is available around. And internationally, you don't face this 70 into 70 exchange rate.
So I think question is how in low budget you still manage knowledge transfer, which is expected in the corporate.
That's a challenge, right?
I mean, one way that typically many centers are doing is having research fellows or somebody who is much more permanent. And obviously, you have to have certain kind of documentations, and there is a continuation of program that you need to do. So from students to student, it should get passed on. So there should be an overlapping window. And at the same time, some research fellows, some lab technicians or otherwise who should be anchoring. So then only it is possible. Also in outside, we have seen the professors are very deeply engaged. Even if they don't understand fully, they understand the architecture and things. So they have things on top of their mind and they have a grip on the overall scheme of things. That's the only way. Even if we are new, it will not change the process. So sooner we adopt to that, we'll be there.
Okay. So thanks all the panelists and thank you for joining us. Thanks Arnab, Sumit, Deepak, Alok, Professor Agarwal, and so great to have you all here.